Here we are in our last session together in 2017, the week of Christmas. It's a great week. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, the Rialto Theater in Loveland offers they offer several great things, but last night they did a one-night showing of the film White Christmas. And that's one of Sandra and I's favorite movie. We've seen it several times on TV, never seen it on the white screen, and it was real on the big screen. It was really fun last night going down and watching White Christmas in a whole theater full of people. And here we are, and a lot of singing going along. My wife is singing the songs, and it was really an enjoyable thing to do. They have two more. Tonight is Scrooged, which neither here nor there. But then on Thursday night is Wonderful Life. So, if it's something you're interested in, But really enjoyable evening last night. Well, we're going to continue our journey. I think I'm going to mix it up a little bit this morning because I want to introduce to you John White, who's a new friend, and he's a new friend to many of us here. He's joined the group, and I just really admire you, John, to come in to a new community and to join a group that has been established for any length of time. There's a lot of stuff to overcome. We've got a dynamic that we're not even aware of, and a history here. And John comes from Philadelphia and has a history with a group there, and I really want you to meet John. So I'm going to kind of switch this up a little bit this morning, because I would like you guys to meet John. Now, the subject matter, he's going to tell you a little bit of his story, and then I'm going to wrap up. I was going to actually do a short teaching, but because of time, I want to give you some time. I really want the guys to meet you, John. So I'm going to give the microphone over to you, and if you could stand right here, John is going to kind of tell us his story, and then we'll just kind of ad lib at the end and kind of see where it goes. This last Wednesday, it's not the last Wednesday, but we're not going to meet next week, the week in between, but our last session together for 2017. Why don't you stand right here so we can get you on the video?
Yeah. Maybe I'll break it, huh?
You're going out all over the world now.
Oh boy! Yeah.
Oh yeah, all over the world.
We got a lot of reflection, but I think a lot of us have the same barber. So, thanks for having me, and I don't mean having me to share, but allowing me to be part of your group. So, life is short. Life is fragile. And I'm reminded we're going to deal with Jacob's death, but years and years ago I taught high school for a little bit, and one of the classes was on death and dying, but it sounds pretty morbid, but it wasn't. Sorry.
No worries.
But one of the things that I remember was Ernest Hemingway had said, it's really not until we look death in the eye that we're free to live. So this whole idea of blessings and Jacob and the kinds of things you've been talking about, Mike, are very interesting. As I look around, I think most of us are probably in the fourth quarter. And so time is marching on, and
overtime.
Yeah. The overtime's a good one. I like that. Yeah, I think I'm in the overtime group, not from age, but from a lot of life experiences. So I grew up in the Philadelphia area, Pennsylvania. My mom is Pennsylvania Dutch, which you may not have any idea what that is, but it's like the Amish kind of thing. And my dad, Irish Catholic, so that's kind of an interesting family blend growing up. And then I'm very thankful to Billy Graham. They both became Christians, different crusades, but when I was early, they both met the Lord at different times. I have a older brother and a younger sister. High school was a good time. My faith really became alive in high school, and probably due to a Young Life leader. I don't know if you're familiar with Young Life, but it's outreach to high school kids. Basically, it believes, its philosophy is that life is relationships, relationship with ourselves, with each other, and our Creator God. And basically, if one of those is broken, we're broken, right? Life just doesn't go like it should. I went to Wheaton College in Wheaton, Illinois, small little town, Christian liberal arts school. That was good for me. I got through that, and I was on my way to Vietnam, but I failed my physical, and so I didn't become a second lieutenant. And what do I do now? So I went to and that's Chicago area. So I went to the south suburbs of Chicago. We call it the South Side. It's really suburbs that far south. But and worked with Young Life, taught school part-time, drove Young Life buses, which is kind of an odd sidebar. So at the time, Young Life had 10 resort areas around the country. They call them camps, but they're really resort areas for high school kids. And so they also had a fleet of 28 Greyhound buses. And so I did that for 5 years, where in the summer we'd go 50,000 miles in 10 weeks and just crisscrossing country. So lots of stories, lots of experiences. I met my wife in Young Life. We lived in Chicago for the first year and a half, then moved back to the Pennsylvania area. It was home for both of us, the Philadelphia area. We were involved with Young Life back then on a lot of different fronts. Also involved with church, with teaching a high school Sunday school class. It was kind of a non-traditional thing, so if we had a room this side, we'd have the kids sitting on the floor. And back in that time, kind of ran it like a magazine, right? And so we'd have somebody share a thought, and then we'd take a little break for donuts or something and hot chocolate, and then we'd have a little teaching time. And so I had them memorize the little saying, and the reason I'll tell you, you'll see the most important thing is that the most important thing remain the most important thing. So every week they would tease me about this. Of course, not in Scripture. It could be. But the most important thing is that the most important thing remain the most important thing. So we'd throw it back and forth and say, so what's the most important thing? Right? And that would carry on conversations. I will see kids that were in that Sunday school class that are now in their 40s, and they'll come up to me and say, the most important thing, you know, and just kind of laugh. But say, you know, they'll say they use that. But, you know, for all of us, you know, what's the most important thing? And I bet you if we went around, it would be, we would think it'd be all the same, but it's not. And people would ask Jesus the same kind of question. So we did that for a number of years. Met with a group like this, probably the same vintage, like 30 plus years, same kind of thing outside of church. Everybody was kind of a little homogeneous, but not. So we had 3 or 4 millionaires that had retired. We had 3 or 4 AA guys, Alcoholics Anonymous. We'd have a bunch of pilgrims that were just trying to find their way through life. And we would start a little different. We would start with going around, how's your journey? Everybody's saying, how's your journey? And then we would say, well, maybe how's your spiritual journey going? And so it'd be a little give and take in the beginning, and somebody would share a thought, and that we would discuss, much like you do here with little teaching, but a little sharing the thought. A work career, so I taught school for 5 or 6 years in the Chicago area. Actually worked for the bus company selling buses that Young Life bought the buses from. They moved me back to Pennsylvania. Did that for a while. Worked for Xerox for actually 12 years, 2 different companies inside Xerox, about 6 years each. A friend asked me to come to work for them, so I worked selling ATMs, the money machines. So then went to work for the manufacturer after him for a couple of years. And then a company called Icon Office Solutions, which was much like Xerox, selling document solutions and copier, printer, faxes, things like that. And then was acquired by Ricoh. So Ricoh bought us in, it doesn't matter what year, but anyway, worked for Ricoh probably 8 years or so. So a lot of technology kind of related things. About halfway through my work career, I was just feeling tired all the time. And so I went to the doctor and got the blood work done and said, oh, you know, that your hemoglobin's really low. That must be, they must have mixed that up. So they had me do it again. Make a long story short, I was diagnosed with a blood cancer. So that kind of changed a lot of things, right? So I still had, my daughter was still, you know, young at the time. I'm trying to think how young, but under 10. And and actually, so I had 3 kids. I didn't tell you that part. My daughter Jenna lives here in Fort Collins, 2 grandkids and her husband. So that's why I'm here. And then I have a son, Chad, my oldest, is in Denver. He's a mortgage banker. And my middle guy, Ryan, is in Pennsylvania. He teaches elementary school and coaches boys lacrosse at the high school. So that's quite a combination. But he just got married in September in Crested Butte. So we're kind of hoping they'll come this way. Back with the cancer thing, that really helped me, what should I say, begin to learn what it is to live one day at a time. So I love the AA guys, I love the big book. It's kind of like the best kept secret outside of church, just in terms of the spiritual stuff going on inside of AA. And one of their mantras is to live one day at a time. And I think we're probably all called to live one day at a time, you know, give us our daily bread, and but we don't, but you know, we're probably called to. So to fast forward to 2017, come January, February last year, my wife would say to me, Jesus is coming. Now, my wife, I was the book guy, you know, I was kind of more like Mike, you know, where I'd just be reading and processing things. I was the school guy. She was an artist and for the design, for the gift industry, and also was very involved in the Young Life. She ran a kids program at Trail West in Buena Vista, Colorado. So she did that for about 25 years. Our kids kind of thought they grew up in Colorado. It was their second home. So this is a little like home being here, and thoroughly enjoying being here. And probably mostly because to be near the family and the grandkids. But anyway, that's so back to this Jesus is coming. So for her to say that was like, really? And in the church, we went to a Bible teaching church, and so that was not unusual. But she would say, we have to be ready. And our kids, she said, our kids need to be ready. It was kind of like, you know, these millennial kids, right? So my daughter got the picture, and she was married, and, you know, her life was pretty well warped. My oldest out here, you know, we were paying for college, and we went to Colorado Christian, and next thing you know, it's kind of like, So he decided he liked to ski more than school, so that was the end of that. and he loves the outdoors. And spiritually, you know, he has faith, but the question is, what are you doing, you know, for Christ and the kingdom? What are you doing on your journey besides enjoying this great creation? The middle guy wasn't married at the time, and so she was like, they need to get it together. So February 11th of last year, I was terminated from my job. I don't know if you've ever had that nice experience, but it's kind of like, really? That was another story. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from my son. Now I'm in Pennsylvania, and he says, so it's 2 a.m., the phone rings, and it's like, ugh. Well, first of all, if you're like me, I got it on vibrate. You know, the phone by the side of the bed, it's my alarm as well as, so it's vibrating and vibrating. And of course, I don't pick up the first time or two. I finally pick up, and he says, they're airlifting, you know, Mom, his mother, from Breckenridge. She had been in Breckenridge skiing with her best high school friend, and then helping. She'd been doing weddings for the last 5 or 6 years. They're airlifting her down from Breckenridge down to St. Anthony's. She has a brain aneurysm. So I'm going, brain aneurysm? I'm kind of like trying to wake up. And meanwhile, my other son's knocking on the door because it's 2 a.m., you know, I didn't pick up the phone, so he lives, you know, a couple miles away. He's over coming in the back door with his dog, and what in the world? So for the next hour, I'm trying to think, you know, how serious is this? You know, what is that? And her friend out there says, you need to get out here. So I was on a plane in a couple hours, got the last seat on a United flight. So God, for the last bunch of months, has really just been in the middle of everything. But so I was at the hospital like by 9 a.m. the next morning. My son had greeted her when she got off the helicopter, and she was, you know, brain hemorrhage. Typically, if it bursts, you have just a terrible headache. So she kind of rolls her eyes at him like, what is going on? And she was not the medical. I was the one who had been to the hospitals all the different years with all kinds of, you know, alarms and chemos and all kinds of fun things. So, you know, she was saying that, you know. By the time I got there, they had her in a drug-induced coma. I had been to a lot of different hospitals, Dana-Farber and some world-class hospitals, St. Anthony's, Catholic Hospital. What an experience, just a different air there. They actually pray over the intercom, but there was just a different air, and the quality of care was absolutely incredible. So God was preparing us and her. Have lots of stories. Each day kind of has stories. She passed away on March 8th, and Jesus just called her home. And like I said, even how that happened was quite an experience. Very thankful for CaringBridge. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's like a social media thing where you can post. And because on the airplane coming out, so I never cried much, tears, right? So I never was kind of the crying type. I had to speak at my mom's funeral a while ago, and I kind of got choked up, and I thought, geez, where'd that come from? So there's been plenty of tears on the airplane out. The initial tears with grieving is a little bit, you know, what is going on here with the loss and just the overall. But CaringBridge allowed us to post where we were and encouraging people to pray, etc. But the comments we got back from around the world, you think around the world, my wife only did, you know, she wasn't like part of a big program or not, you know, but comments from people that she had touched over the years, which really brought different kinds of tears. You know, it's like, oh my goodness. So here we are, you know, and some of the things that stir within me is our legacy. So what's your legacy? You know, what are the things that are back to the most important to you? who have you touched? You know, who has God touched through you, through me, through us? And she just kind of did it one day at a time. Just, you know, a couple here, a couple there. Next thing you know, years go by, and we'd have all these kids that had lived with us or been with us, and that family relationships. They say in retirement, I just saw yesterday, if you really want to be happy, it's all about relationships. If your kids live out there and your best friend's over there, you better put some money aside to go over there, and you may want to think about selling your house and going out there. And it was secular. So, but the point well taken, right? That at the end, life's really about relationships. So we had a service in Buena Vista. We have lots of friends in Buena Vista. We had a service in Pennsylvania. People say, well, don't make any big decisions. Well, it was kind of like just stuff happened. Sold the house without putting it on the market. That's a story in itself. How do you empty a house after 40-some years? Especially when it's full of wedding stuff for wedding, and especially the whole art thing. And so the kids come in, and it's like, oh my gosh. Empty the house, that, you know, happened. How do you get movers? How do you move? The idea of relocating, it wasn't like a decision. It was just kind of like, this is what I need to be doing, right? It just, well, it was like a God thing. So relocated, I arrived out here mid-July, and so God is good. He's been in the middle of this really for the last number of months, really present, and just waiting on him to see what's next. So thanks for letting me be part of this, and what should I say, spread my wings a little bit, meet some people and so forth. So back to you.
Well, John, it is just a real pleasure for me to get to know you. We got put together through a mutual friend, Kurt. You guys know Kurt and Marcia Smeester, and their youngest son is Jake, isn't it? Jake is
Maggie Wallace is my daughter's best friend, so everything is interrelated.
Yeah, so it was really Jake Smeester put us together.
Jake's the one that said, "Ooh, you need to meet Mike Hudorf."
Yeah, yeah. Through Kurt, you know, we're good friends, the Smeesters and Hadorf. So, but it's just been wonderful. And then the more I really enjoyed hearing, because I learned aspects about your story that I didn't know this morning. But I'd like to just kind of close up this morning, and I'd like for us to gather around John. I didn't know we were going to do this, but I would like for us to just pray over you. This is, you know, next week is Christmas. This is going to be your first Christmas without your wife. You've got loved ones around you. You're a very blessed man in that regard. And it's a new life, and I'd like to just, as a group of men, as your heart leads you to this, pray for John, and especially in light of this Christmas season, and for this to be what I was going to say this morning, and I'll do my teaching next time. We're going to be looking at the death of Jacob. And the thing where my mind has been going over the last, for quite some time, is that there is no birth without a death. No such thing. And there is no death without a new birth. The two are intertwined. Here, you just expressed, in a very short way, a lifetime of memories and a life together with your wife, who's no longer here, but she is here. We believe that. But yet you're called to a new birth as well. And of course, guys, we're going to celebrate the ultimate, the birth of Christ next week. And the story is so entwined that the birth, the incarnation of Christ leads to a death, which then leads to a new birth. And that's where that's where our mind is gonna go next time we're together. The first week in January we'll do that. But let's wrap up our time this morning, and John, we're gonna ask you to go.
Let's have Dick move, John.
Yeah. I was just. Would you move? All righty, and Merry Christmas, everybody out there. All 3 or 4 of you that watch these videos.